Welcome to Talk Tactic. Today we are going to be breaking down the characters from Thor Ragnarok, and we're going to be discussing the alpha male archetype characters and the beta character types.
Right. If you were listening to our discussion from the man who shot Liberty Valance, we talked about three specific sort of archetypes for alphas. There's the alpha that sacrifices himself for his own benefit. There's the alpha that there's the alpha that sacrifices himself for the benefit of society, and then there's the alpha that sacrifices society for his own personal benefit and gain. Okay, guys, we just want to remind you that some of the ideas that we're going to be talking about are important to this discussion, and the purpose of this discussion is to use the information in books and other media that have been recommended to us for reading, and we're going to filter this movie, Thor Ragnarok, in the context of those ideas. And I just want to remind you guys, because I got some comments and feedback from some people messaging me after our last video talking about alphas. And
Any
these,
death threats?
no death threats, but you know, these aren't all our original ideas. I mean, there's a whole world of people that have these sort of discussions.
Philosophers?
Yeah. And we're just going ahead, we're reading and we're immersing ourselves in these different ideas. And then what we're doing is we're just taking those ideas and we're taking what we love to do, which is watch movies, and we're kind of filtering the movies through that idea filter. So
Giving us a context to talk about these ideas.
right. So I really do appreciate your comments. If you want to comment, just feel free and comment to us, or you can PM us, and we'll be happy to have a conversation with you. And then we'll address your ideas or whatever it is on another video. That's why we're going to be doing a video that defines alpha. Like we stated earlier, there's the three types of alphas that we identify for you in the movie Who Shot Liberty Valance. But in the book, How to Be a 3% Man, there is this very interesting line that is spoken of. It talks about the masculine energy. And in Thor Ragnarok, I believe that Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, is symbolic of the masculine energy. One, because it's a hammer, right? A hammer can be used to build or destroy. And Thor, if he was an emotional being like Loki, more than likely Mjolnir would be a tool of destruction. A tool
Yes.
to take down what has been built up by other men, right?
Yes.
But instead, since Thor is the one who wields Mjolnir, the hammer represents a building up or a maintaining of something. In the book, How to Be a 3% Man, there's this very interesting idea that comes up, and it's the masculine energy. And part of the way that it's described is breaking through barriers and being able to achieve. And in Thor Ragnarok, there is a symbol that Thor uses that would represent the masculine energy, and that's Mjolnir, Thor's magical hammer. That sounds funny, doesn't it? But yeah, so I've lost it, man.
So, guys, if you wonder what happened to your masculinity, it's because you don't have a magical hammer.
That's right, and you need to have a magic hammer.
A true alpha male, a man who goes for what he wants and has positive expectations that he will achieve his goal, will choose his purpose and passion first. Masculine energy is about purpose, drive, mission, succeeding, accomplishing, breaking through barriers, achieving goals, etc.
Right. And what's interesting in the movie Thor Ragnarok, or in all the Thor movies, is that Thor has Mjolnir, which is his hammer. And that hammer can be used either to destroy or to build. And if it was in the hands of an emotional man like Loki, the hammer would probably be used to destroy what other men have built. But since Thor is the one that wields Mjolnir, it's obviously used to maintain what has been built by his father, Odin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another interesting thing in the movie is that that energy is destroyed by Hela, the goddess of death, who's a woman, and it kind of leaves Thor impotent and powerless for a while.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so it's a kind of an interesting sort of symbolic.
That was probably the most interesting thing about the movie.
Why is that? Explain that to
Well,
me.
because Thor had to. There was a point in the movie where Thor said, "I can't do it without my hammer.
Right, the masculine energy.
I can't do it without that." And then his father was like, "Yes, you can do it without that." And so that was actually that moment and that whole scenario about him losing his hammer was probably the only real character growth throughout the whole movie that I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to take. But Thor's not Thor without the hammer.
No, he's not.
And I hope that somehow his hammer is reforged for him because it's like Superman without a cape.
Yeah, it's like Superman without his underwear.
And we're back to the underwear man. Johnny's very upset that they took Superman's underwear.
Okay,
away.
so
But that is been the iconic.
but also Thor, he lost his eye too in this movie.
Yes, that totally surprised me. I almost didn't.
Do you think
believe
that's long term or not?
I don't know if it's long term or not. But I don't understand why they had to take.
Well,
his
they
eye.
did it because it made him like his father.
So tell me, what do you think about that? Like, what do you think about the relationship between Thor and his father and Loki and his father? Is there something important there?
Yeah, there is. It's because Thor lost his eye, and he also lost his hammer, and his father didn't have a hammer. His father didn't have that eye either. So it's this movie was kind of like about bringing Thor to a place of maturity that the previous two movies had not been able to do, and they did it by obviously by visually making him more like his father, and not just visually, but there's even a point where Loki says, "You look," or maybe it was Loki, or maybe it was Hela. I can't remember which one it was, but one of them said, "You remind me of Dad now."
Yeah, I think
You remember that?
I think it was Hela that said that. Yeah.
Could have been Hela.
Yeah, I think it might.
Or maybe it could have been both of them, actually, maybe. But that comment was made. And the reason for that is Thor was having a character development. And it was significant, and we did need a visual to go along with that.
Yeah, one of the things that I do like about the Thor storyline is the importance of the father in the two male characters, Loki and Thor. And even though Loki has this resentment towards his father, you can tell that every time Odin gives a positive towards Loki, it really strikes a chord in him deeply.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you want to add to that?
Well, the dynamic between Hela and Thor and Loki, I was thrown off by Hela being their sister. I was thrown off by that. It seems like it's coming out of nowhere. Like, we've never heard of her before. Like, how is she tied into the whole story of just besides being in this movie? Like, why are we bringing her in all of a sudden? It seems like out of nowhere, and I don't remember them talking about her being their sister before that, or they have an evil sister or anything
and
like
then
that.
is she the daughter of Freya? Is it Freya, the mother of Loki and Thor? Like, is she also a daughter of her daughter? And if not, then who's her mother, right? And it's kind of interesting. So there's this idea that the feminine is returning to Asgard, and that initiates the destruction of Asgard.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And then you have this being called Surtur who has to come destroy Asgard completely so it can have a rebirth of sorts. In the comic books, Hela rules over the realm of Hel, Hel, and for in Norse mythology and in the comic books. And she's not the sister of Thor and Loki in the comic books. She is not. But I think she ends up being a love interest of Loki, I think, in the comic books. So it threw me off too when
She is way too alpha for Loki. Way too alpha.
yeah, but maybe an alpha woman wants a beta
Yeah, that's possible, but
to control
yeah, that's possible.
hypergamy. Right? He's technically a rightful heir to the throne, not through.
She's technically a rightful heir to the throne,
Well,
right?
that's true. So she wouldn't need Loki for that. If she wasn't so powerful, she would have been a good match, good mate for Loki. They looked similar though, didn't they?
They did look similar. They
Yeah.
both had black hair.
Yeah, and
They were
very
both
similar facial
very
features.
darkly dressed, all
Pale.
in black. Yeah,
Yeah.
pale.
Yeah.
And they both have the Baphomet.
But yeah, they both have the horns and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But you know, Loki's technically not a blood relation. So they shouldn't look alike. That's the weird
Maybe
part.
that explains why he's so wimpy.
Yeah, maybe. Because Hela's kick ass. She is. In The Rational Male, it also outlines 3 archetypes of alphas. And that's the scoundrel alpha, the regular common alpha, and alphas that are leaders of men. In the movie Thor Ragnarok, you have 2 very distinct characters. You have Thor and you have Loki. And at first glance, you would probably say that both of them are alpha males or have alpha characteristics, right? Because they're both very driven. They both will take huge risks to attain their goals, right? And this
Right.
seems to be very sort of alpha characteristics. And like we said in our review of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, that there are alphas that are willing to sacrifice the good of society to benefit themselves. And Loki would very much kind of fit into that demographic of alphas.
Yeah.
But being alpha has to do with your mindset and how you see the world and not what you do in the world. What you do in the world is just sort of a reflection of the mindset. And if you want to have a better understanding of what an alpha is, why don't you check out our link. Show them where our link's at, man. And you can get a very in-depth discussion about what is an alpha through the lens of these different readings and different media that we've been.
If you're an alpha or a beta, it affects how the action is done, not what the action is.
Right. And this is how you distinguish between Thor and Loki. Loki actually being a beta while Thor is the real alpha.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's Thor's mindset that distinguishes him from Loki. Now, it's very clear that no matter what situation that Thor is in, he's always confident that he's going to be able to overcome that situation. Even when he's captured and he's bound, he never seems like he's on the outs.
Okay, so I want to give an example using Thor Ragnarok of what I said earlier about being an alpha or beta doesn't affect the action, but it affects how it's done. Okay, so this is what I mean by that. So let's say you have Thor, and he's ruling over Asgard, just as his natural self, right? On the other hand, you have Loki. He's also ruling over Asgard, but he's doing it in disguise as Odin. So both of them would be ruling Asgard, but because it's alpha versus beta, the way that they're ruling is different, is affected by their alpha traits or their beta personality.
Right. So Thor wouldn't want to be ruling Asgard pretending to be some other man.
No.
No, he would never do that, right? But Loki is completely comfortable.
As long as he gets to be the ruler,
Right.
it's still a good thing for his ego.
Right.
Even if he has to dress up or disguise himself as something else.
Yeah. Now, I think it's in like chimpanzees, or maybe it's like baboons. But so this is kind of off topic. But the alpha male gets to mate with like all the females, but they call them like sneaker betas, sneaker, and what they'll do is when the alpha's not around, they'll like procreate with the female. It's kind of like what Loki's doing, except for he's ruling Asgard
Yeah.
sneakily, right? Because Thor's not there, and he gets rid of Odin, so he disguises himself as Odin, and then he kind of rules in a sneaky creeper way. But yeah, so that's a very big difference between Thor and Loki. Thor is always Thor's always out working. Thor's always he knows what he wants to do. He wants to make sure that the realm is good and safe for Asgard and all the people in Asgard. And he's always out working. Loki's very happy to be ruling Asgard and watching theater and being entertained and having being fed fruits and desserts.
Yeah.
And it's a very big difference, right? Between Thor wouldn't be happy like that. Thor is much more comfortable being out adventuring, doing something, getting work done. So this is another part of it's their mindset. It's not the actions themselves. Because Thor would have fun, you know. I'm sure he probably would like the life of a party man if Thor was there.
Yeah, of course. And this is what I liked about Anthony Hopkins was the difference in Anthony Hopkins when he was technically Loki and when he was the honorable Odin.
Yeah, he did a good job.
I like that.
Acting as
I like
Tom
that.
Hiddleston, huh?
Yeah, I like that.
That was good.
I like that contrast that Anthony Hopkins brought to that part.
Yeah.
That was a nice element to
Yeah.
this movie.
Yeah, he's definitely a master actor, man.
He is.
He's awesome.
And especially the way he was eating that thing he was there like that.
Yeah.
That was so funny.
Yeah, that was funny.
That was a good part. That was a good moment.
Yeah, so Loki, you know, he has a malleable vision of his outcome. He knows that he wants power, right? And as long as he's able to obtain power somehow, he's happy with that. He doesn't have a very clear and concise vision of what he wants. He just knows that power is something that he wants, right?
Yeah.
So even though he does obtain power, you would think there's people that would want to associate being an alpha with what you have, what you inherit, what you achieve, but it's not about that.
It's not about that.
No, it's not about that at all. We're gonna have something here.
Well, I had to bring this up because it's exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
Power isn't financial resources, status, or influence over others. Power is the degree over which you control your own life. And that is from The Rational Male by Rollo Tomassi.
Right. So what does that mean about Loki?
Well, no, not about Loki, but you were saying the idea that people think power is the nice things you have or the car you have or all these things. Mm-hmm. But actually power, and we discussed this in Liberty Valance, what's the true form of power? Is it social power or is it the sort of power that John Wayne has to control his life? Well, we're talking about power as it relates to a person being able to, the amount of control that a person has over their own life. Not over other people, not over...
Yeah, and Loki definitely
material
doesn't have
things,
control
stuff like
over
that.
his own life.
Right.
Because he's very opportunistic in a bad way.
And you know, Loki is, that's interesting about Loki because technically Loki has the ability to do all kinds of things to manipulate other people and have sort of use power over other people, but then when it comes to his own life, it's like he's powerless.
Right. Loki is always constantly leveraging the outcomes of his situation, where Thor isn't. He's not trying to leverage the outcome constantly. You know, he finds himself in a certain spot and he knows where he wants to go. He knows like, hey, look, this is what's happening to me. My city is under attack and I need to get back there. And he's very forward and he confronts the situation and he doesn't do it in a roundabout way. Where Loki, on the other hand, he probably wants to go back and help Asgard. But what he wants to do is he says, hey, I'm gonna get in good with this guy first because this is gonna put me in a more opportunistic place, and then I'm gonna buy my time, and then if I have to backstab this person or that person, I'll work my way around the back, and then I'll get to Asgard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's another big difference.
This is what I was saying. It was that when James Stewart was robbed at gunpoint, he didn't back down from that because he had his mission as an alpha and he had his principles. And even though he physically wasn't able to defend himself, he didn't back down from that.
So how is Loki unlike that?
Well, all that has to happen for Loki to change anything is he just needs to be threatened. One, he needs to be threatened with some kind of danger, some kind of violence to change, or he needs to be given some kind of promise of power or reward or pleasure. So either one of those things will sway Loki 180 degrees.
Right.
One of the things about the alpha personality is the fearlessly moving towards your goals. Thor is such a great example of this in this movie. He gets captured. After he's captured, he knows that he's going to escape. After he's not able to escape, then he knows that he's going to defeat the Hulk, which he doesn't know is the Hulk, but he knows that he's going to find a way out, and he's going to find a way out, and then he's going to go back to Asgard and complete his mission. He knows that.
And he's always comfortable too.
And he's always comfortable in that, and he's always moving towards that. And then after he fights the Hulk, and then they're in the same room together, he's trying to convince the Hulk, okay, so like he's putting together his team. He's already thinking like, I'm putting together my team to go back to Asgard. He's talking to Thor, and then that other warrior comes in, and he's trying to convince her.
Is it Valkyrie? I think it's Valkyrie.
Yeah. So everything Thor does, it's towards moving back to complete his mission. Now, Loki, on the other hand, actually, he said some kind of thing. They were in the elevator, and he's like, I think maybe I should stay here.
Yeah.
Like he would be happy. He would be happy staying there, away from danger, in a sort of a prestigious, powerful position.
Yeah, because he thinks he can usurp.
Because he thinks he can. Yeah, eventually. Yeah. But even if he couldn't usurp, he would be perfectly happy staying there, away from physical danger, surviving, and being a ruler.
Right.
He would be a lot more happy being a ruler than
because Loki, he's just concerned with attaining power. He doesn't have any clear vision of his future. So he can't move fearlessly towards any one outcome.
Right.
Because there's no outcome.
There's no
mindset.
thing in his mind that he has except for power. That's it. Right. So every circumstance that Loki finds himself in, the question is, how do I maximize my power out of this?
Right, he's constantly leveraging the situation.
He doesn't have to go back to Asgard to get more power if he can just stay there and get more power.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, and this is what puts him in a beta frame, in a mindset of a beta mindset versus Thor's mindset. And I hope we made a clear distinction between the two.
Well, the other thing is comfortable in any environment, which, of course, Loki is very uncomfortable in frequently.
Yeah, so a good example of this, right? If Loki would have... Okay, so a good example of this is if Loki would have been back in the presence of the Hulk, he would have been extremely tense and probably fearful, right? And here's Thor, who just got beat up by the Hulk, right?
Right.
And then when he's back in the presence of the Hulk, it's like he has no fear of what's going to happen next.
No, he doesn't.
And so what that ends up doing is when the Hulk sees him, Hulk is cool with him. Hulk doesn't have a problem with him. He respects him to a certain degree, at least.
Yeah.
Because Hulk knows he's the main badass of them. What?
Miss Smith gave us science. I'm doing science.
Okay. Okay, good job. Science is wonderful.
It was so good.
Yeah. I think we got that. Do we
Yeah.
need to go back on that?
Just go back and talk about the hammer.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the book. Amazing. Especially if they're good quality videos.
Okay,
That's
we're
right, because
recording.
we don't sponsor anybody. Talk Tactic unless you
We
pay us.
sponsor
Sugar
free. We sponsor freedom.
Because I'm proud to be.